If you think the most dangerous thing about a large cash deposit is the report your bank files, you are already standing with one foot over the wire. I want you to understand something most Americans never learn until fear teaches it to them the expensive way. The federal report is usually not the danger. The instinct to dodge the report is the danger. That is the tripwire. I have spent my life studying incentives, systems, and human behavior under pressure. And this is one of the cleanest examples I know of how ordinary people turn a routine rule into a personal disaster. They hear there is a line at $10,000. They panic, they decide to stay under it, they split their own legal money into smaller deposits, they try to look invisible, and in that moment, they do the one thing that can make clean money look dirty. That is not a financial problem. That is a psychological problem. You are not fighting the government in that moment. You are fighting your own fear of being seen. And fear, when it starts making tactical decisions, is one of the most expensive advisors on earth. The first thing I want to do is separate the wire from the shock. A cash transaction over $10,000 triggers a report by the bank, not by you. The bank files it. You do not sign a confession. You do not file your own accusation. You do not announce guilt. A routine report goes to a federal bureau inside the Treasury Department. The bank is complying with the law. That is all. Most of the time, nothing happens. That sentence matters more than people realize. Most of the time, nothing happens. Nobody kicks your door in because you deposited $12,000 from selling a car. Nobody assumes you are a criminal because your daughter gave you cash to help with medical bills. Nobody freezes your life because you move your own savings from one bank to another in a single clean transfer. The report is paperwork. The tripwire is intent. That is the sentence I would carve into the wall of every bank lobby in America if I could. The report is paperwork. The tripwire is intent. You can have legal money. You can have a legal reason. You can have a lifetime of honest work behind every dollar. And still, if you deliberately break up deposits to avoid the reporting threshold, you can create a federal problem where none needed to exist. Now you understand why I do not treat this as a technical banking issue. I treat it as a character test under stress. Ordinary people hear over 10,000 gets reported, and they immediately start acting like prey. They look for side doors. They look for smaller numbers. They look for branch-to-branch tricks. They look for a way to move without being noticed. But banks do not just watch size. They watch pattern. That is where the second wire lives. The first wire is the threshold itself. The second wire is behavior that looks like evasion. A routine currency transaction report is one thing. A suspicious activity report is another. One is routine. The other is interpretive. One says cash crossed a line. The other says behavior may be trying to hide from the line, and there is no comfort in thinking small numbers keep you safe. That is amateur thinking. A suspicious activity report has no meaningful emotional threshold for your comfort. What matters is not whether you stayed under 10,000. What matters is whether your pattern tells the machine that you were trying to stay under 10,000. That is why the little trick so many people think is clever is actually the dumbest move in the whole system. 9,000 on Monday, 8,000 on Wednesday, 9,500 next week, a little here, a little there, different branch, different day, same bank, maybe even different banks to the frightened retiree. That feels careful. To a pattern recognition system, it feels like a confession written in installments. I want you to see the deeper lesson because it goes far beyond this one rule. A great many people ruin themselves financially by treating systems as if they are blind and by treating fear as if it is intelligence. It is the same mistake people make in markets. They think they are reducing risk by reacting. They think motion is protection. They think the appearance of caution is the same as actual prudence. They think chopping a move into smaller emotional pieces makes it safer. No, it often just makes your intent easier to read. The market reads your panic sales. The compensation system reads your silence. The debt machine reads your dependence. And the banking system reads your pattern. Once you understand that, the correct behavior becomes almost boring. Boring is good. Boring keeps you rich. Boring keeps you out of avoidable trouble. Boring is one of the most underappreciated forms of financial genius in the world. If you sell a car for $14,000 in cash, the intelligent move is not to play hide and seek with the deposit. The intelligent move is to deposit all $14,000 in one clean transaction and keep a bill of sale with names, date, amount, and signatures. That is what I call the paper shield. The paper shield beats the panic shuffle every single time. You are not trying to outsmart the bank. You are trying to make your story legible. That is a completely different objective. Legibility is protection. Confusion is cost. When your children give you money, the same principle applies. People become ridiculous around gifts because they confuse tax gossip with actual procedure. They whisper that gifts have to stay under some magical number on the recipient's side. They advise splitting deposits. They recommend multiple branches, multiple days, multiple envelopes, as if the banking system were run by sleepy clerks with no memory. That fantasy belongs in another century. If your child gives you $15,000 in cash, the strong move is not to turn yourself into a part-time smuggler. The strong move is to deposit the full amount and keep a simple gift letter stating who gave it, to whom, when, how much, and that repayment is not expected. One clean move, one clean explanation, one clean record. That is how adults handle money. There is another scenario that bothers me more because it catches decent people at a vulnerable moment. Moving your own savings. This is where grief, confusion, and fatigue do terrible work. A spouse dies. An account is being closed. Another bank offers a better rate. A retiree wants simplicity. The money is theirs. The source is obvious. The motive is innocent. And because life already feels heavy, they move the money in smaller pieces, not to commit a crime, but to avoid hassle. This is one of the cruelest parts of any large system. Systems do not see sorrow. Systems see sequence. The software does not know you buried a husband last month. It does not know you taught children for 35 years. It does not know the transfer felt emotionally easier in 3 pieces than in 1. It sees what it is built to see, pattern, and that is why I tell you never to confuse innocence of motive with safety of method. Your motive may be blameless. Your method may still trip the wire. If you are moving your own money, move it in one clean transaction and keep records from both sides of the move. Statements, transfer confirmations, dates, amounts, origin, destination. Do not make the machine guess. Make the trail obvious. That is one of the most valuable rules in life, not just banking. Never let an indifferent system infer what you can document directly. Inheritance follows the same law of human stupidity. People receive money from an estate and suddenly start behaving like frightened actors in a bad crime movie. They slice up deposits, they spread out timing, they look over their shoulder, they convert documentation into drama. That is what weak operators do. Strong operators simplify. If you inherit cash or receive estate proceeds, deposit the full amount and keep the estate documents, settlement letter, will, executor statement, or whatever clearly identifies the source. Your life gets easier the moment you stop trying to look uninteresting and start trying to look well documented. That is a profound shift. Most people spend their entire financial life optimizing appearances. The wealthy optimize structure. Retirees especially need to hear that because retirement is when the appetite for disturbance goes down while the importance of clean procedure goes up. You want peace. I understand that. But peace does not come from sneaking around a threshold. Peace comes from having a file drawer that can answer a question 3 years later in 60 seconds. That is why I respect paperwork more than performance. Performance is what people show. Paperwork is what survives scrutiny. That is not glamorous advice. It is much better than glamorous advice. Now let me tell you where this gets even more perverse. Some people receive a Social Security lump sum and create a problem out of nothing because they cannot tolerate the sight of a large deposit. They move it around, they fragment it, they react emotionally to size. Do not do that. The government already knows what it paid you. The bank already knows what it received. The record exists before your anxiety enters the room. The intelligent move is often to leave a clean event alone. One of the great skills in capital allocation is knowing when not to improve something that is already aligned. That applies to taxes. That applies to investing. And it applies here. A lot of confusion on this subject gets made worse by another modern disease, which is the blending of unrelated rules into one giant blob of fear. People hear about a $600 reporting proposal for payment apps from years ago. They hear rumors about Venmo, PayPal, and Zelle. They hear the letters IRS and Treasury and FinCEN all jumbled together. Then they act on an emotional summary rather than a factual distinction. That is how citizens become prey to rumor. You have to be better than that. A serious person separates categories. Cash deposits at banks are one category. Third-party payment platform. Tax reporting is another category. A proposal that did not become law is another category. A proposal to raise the cash reporting threshold is another category. If you do not separate categories, you start building your financial decisions out of noise, and noise is expensive. I have made a fortune, in part, by insisting on clean distinctions while other people drown in emotional blur. You should do the same. Now let us talk about the moment that makes many people weak. The bank counter, a teller asks where the money came from. You feel your chest tighten. You feel as though you are suddenly in an interrogation room. You begin to over-explain, under-explain, joke, apologize, ramble, or try to redirect. Every one of those is a mistake. You do not owe a monologue. You owe clarity. I sold my car. It was a gift from my daughter. I am consolidating accounts. It is inheritance from my brother's estate. That is the window script, short, true, documented. Nothing theatrical. You are not performing innocence. You are providing context. Never say you are trying to avoid being reported. Never ask whether something will trigger something. Never volunteer a plan to break up the transaction. Never flirt with the line verbally or operationally. Weak people think danger lives in the system. Often danger enters through their own mouth. You should understand why this matters psychologically. Once fear enters a situation, people want reassurance. They start fishing for permission. They want the teller to give them a loophole, an emotional anesthetic, a nod that says, yes, this smaller arrangement sounds smarter. But a system is not there to soothe you. It is there to record you. That is why verbal discipline matters. Silence is not enough. Clarity is better than silence. Brevity is better than nervous cleverness. Documentation is better than both. There is another hard truth here that people dislike because it offends their sense of identity. There is no good citizen exemption. There is no retirement halo. There is no I paid taxes for 40 years discount on the laws of pattern recognition. The system does not care whether you have a beautiful moral autobiography. It cares what the record looks like. That sounds cold. It is cold, but once you accept that coldness, you can protect yourself far more effectively. The mature response to a cold system is not outrage. The mature response is clean structure. That is what I want for you. Clean structure. I do not want you spending your later years trying to explain innocent money to a process that was built to detect evasion. I do not want grief, divorce, estate cleanup, caregiving chaos, or simple fatigue pushing you into procedural mistakes. I do not want you treating every large deposit like a social embarrassment. I want you to operate with quiet confidence. And quiet confidence comes from three things: understand the wire, refuse the panic reflex, build the paper shield. That is the whole game. The wire is simple. A large cash transaction gets reported. The report itself is not the enemy. The panic reflex is deadly. The instinct to stay under the line by fragmenting clean money is what creates avoidable danger. The paper shield is your protection. Bills of sale, gift letters, settlement documents, transfer confirmations, bank statements, one sentence describing source and date, a folder that can answer questions without emotion. If you gave me only 5 minutes with the retiree who handles occasional large cash events, that is what I would teach. In fact, I would make them create what I call the quiet folder. Physical or digital, I do not care. Label it transaction records. And every time money arrives in a way that could later invite confusion, place 4 things inside: a short note stating the source and date, the supporting document that proves the source, the bank statement showing the deposit, the transfer confirmation if money moved between institutions. That folder is not paranoia. It is refusal power. Refusal power is the ability to say to future confusion, "No, you do not get to turn this into a story. The record is already here." That is a powerful way to live. Most people spend their life trapped in reaction. A smaller number live from documentation, reserves, ownership, and design. That is why the same habits that help you in banking also help you in investing. When you own good businesses, you do not need to invent explanations every week. The economics do the talking. When your household cash flow is clean, you do not need to lie to yourself about what you can afford. The numbers do the talking. When your tax and transaction records are in order, you do not need to improvise under pressure. The file does the talking. Structure removes drama. And drama is one of the great destroyers of both wealth and judgment. Let me push the lesson one step further, because that is where people usually resist. Many people hear all this and think, "Fine, I understand the rule. I will just avoid cash altogether." That may sound sophisticated, but it is often just another version of fear-making policy. Cash itself is not the villain. Poor handling is the villain. A car sale can be legitimate. A family gift can be legitimate. An inheritance can be legitimate. A transfer of your own savings can be legitimate. A lump. Some government payment can be legitimate. The line between routine and ruin is not legitimacy of source alone. It is source plus method plus records. That is the real machine. If the source is clean, the method is clean, and the records are clean, your odds of sleeping well go up dramatically. If the source is clean but the method looks evasive and the records are weak, you have taken a quiet, ordinary event and turned it into a costly emotional gamble. That is the sort of bet I never liked. I do not like bets where the upside is tiny and the downside is catastrophic. Breaking up deposits to avoid a routine report is exactly that kind of bet. What do you gain if you get away with it? Nothing meaningful. What do you risk if the pattern is interpreted as structuring stress? Legal expense, frozen time, potential seizure, potential criminal exposure. That is terrible asymmetry. And good capital allocation begins with respecting asymmetry. You do not need every law in America memorized to protect yourself here. You just need to stop doing dumb things for small emotional relief. That is a very Buffett sentence, because much of intelligent financial life comes down to that. Do not do dumb things for small emotional relief. Do not borrow to impress people who are not writing you checks. Do not trade your freedom for status rent. Do not buy complexity when simplicity does the job. And do not turn a routine bank report into a personal federal problem. because you were afraid of a form you were never even going to see. There is one more moment I want you prepared for, because preparation lowers fear. If anyone from a federal agency contacts you about your banking activity, do not start explaining your life story. Do not sign things in a burst of compliance. Do not talk yourself into a deeper hole because you think honesty means immediate, unstructured disclosure. There is a time for explanation and a time for counsel. That moment is a time for counsel. You say you want to contact your attorney, then you do exactly that. A tax attorney or a criminal defense attorney with financial matters experience can help you far better than your adrenaline can. Prepared people do not improvise under official pressure. They escalate intelligently. That is what adults do with serious systems. Now step back with me and look at the larger lesson, because this is bigger than one law and one threshold. Modern financial life punishes sloppy pattern management. The payroll system reads your dependence. The debt system reads your appetite for monthly illusions. The consumer system reads your impatience. The market reads your emotional exits. And the compliance system reads your attempts to disappear. In every case, the same strategic principle wins. Do not build your life around looking unremarkable. Build your life around being clear cash flow, clear ownership, clear records, clear intent, clear procedure. That is how you get what so few people have, which is low cortisol wealth. Low cortisol wealth is not just about having money. It is about having money arranged in a way that does not constantly force you into defensive improvisation. A person with no records and lots of fear can have assets and still live like prey. A person with clean systems and modest resources can sleep like an owner. That difference matters. I want you on the owner side of that line. The owner side does not panic at a threshold. The owner side respects the wire, crosses it cleanly when necessary, and keeps the paper shield ready. The owner side does not act cute with branch visits and calendar spacing. The owner side does not let a neighbor's tax folklore become a federal problem. The owner side knows that trying to look smaller than you are is usually a losing game. There is dignity in clean procedure. There is strength in saying the true thing simply. There is peace in building records before you need them. And there is real freedom in not being one bad decision away from a preventable mess. So here is the final test. The next time cash enters your life in a meaningful amount, what kind of operator are you going to be? Are you going to become small? Are you going to start slicing, hiding, spacing, and whispering? Are you going to let fear turn your own legal money into a pattern, or are you going to act like a grown owner? One move, one explanation, one file, one clean trail. That is the door in front of you. On one side is the panic shuffle, the amateur urge to duck the line and hope the machine does not notice. On the other side is the paper shield, the quiet discipline of depositing your money, honestly documenting its source, and refusing to act guilty about money that is not guilty. Most people will tell themselves they are being careful when they choose the first path. They are not being careful. They are touching the wire. If you want a low-stress financial life, if you want to keep your later years out of needless legal fog, if you want to stop paying for fear with bad decisions, choose the second path. Cross the line cleanly. Keep the folder. Respect the system without trying to outsmart it. That is how you keep the report as paperwork and prevent the paperwork from becoming a story about you.